Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 10th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to the 12, "A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher, and the slave to be like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing is secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I will also deny before my Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Today, Amanda and I went to Medieval Times to celebrate our 3rd anniversary. And it was great. For those of you who've never been to Medieval Times, it's a dinner theater, and it's based on around knights, around games on horseback. There's jousting, there's sword fights. It's a lot of fun. And it was Amanda's first time there. And I haven't been since I was a Cub Scout, way back in probably 3rd grade. So today I brought a sword. And, sword fighting is a lot of fun. When I was growing up, the knights from Medieval Times would come and they would do the sword fighting for our Cub Scout group at our blue and gold dinners. And I loved it so much that my dad, when we got home, made for my sister and me cardboard helmet and a cardboard shield that we got to decorate, and little toy swords and flails. So we would go out into the backyard and we'd just start wailing on each other, and we had a great time with it. But then you hear a story like today, where Jesus says that he has not come to bring peace, but a sword. And you wonder, what does this really mean? This is Jesus. We sing, peace on earth, goodwill to all at Christmas time. How can he be saying that he has come to bring a sword and not peace? In medieval times, the knight that won that night was known as the warrior priest, one who was renowned for his faithfulness and prayer. Yet, when we look at Jesus, he takes the sword and he turns it around. And no longer a sword, but a cross. And on this cross, we don't find a warrior king. We don't find somebody who leads us in victorious battle, slaying his enemies and spilling the blood everywhere. We find one who gave himself into the hands of those who hate him. We find one who gave himself into the hands of God's enemies. We find one who shed his blood for us. Well, this gospel reading is one of the ones that's most dreaded by preachers. We spend so much of our time talking about God as love. And then, like Donald Trump on Twitter, Jesus said something that triggers a PR nightmare. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. Whoever denies me before others, I will deny before my Father in heaven. Those who swiftly condemn Islam as a religion of violence must have forgotten that Jesus himself announces his intention to wage war on our world and to pit family members against one another. This is a saying that we like to downplay or ignore. It's one that we like to sweep under the carpet and to hide behind a curtain. But Jesus makes things even more difficult, saying, "What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light. What you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops." So much for damage control. As Christians on the North Shore, we cherish peace and cooperation. But Jesus challenges these values in his teaching today. This is even more upsetting given recent current events. The culture of peace and cooperation is deteriorating rapidly around the world. The Queen of England last week gave a somber speech outlining the ruling party's plan to leave the European Union. The fragile peace in the Middle East has been destabilized by a thoughtless Twitter accusation that Qatar is aiding terrorists. Tensions continue to build between the U.S. and North Korea after the death of student Otto Warmbier. And Syria continues to be the victim of competing Russian and U.S. interests. At home, the Senate healthcare bill, which was unveiled this Thursday, was drafted behind closed doors. The gridlock in our state government and the dysfunction threatens to do irreparable damage to our children and our social institutions that protect the most vulnerable among us. And in 2016, a Pew Research survey reveals that relations between Republicans and Democrats are at an all-time low, with both sides seeing the other as highly unfavorable. And if what's happening on the global stage or the national stage seems too far removed from our daily lives, peace and cooperation may still escape us at work or at home, with difficult colleagues, personal goals that compete with those of our significant other, friends who seem to live in a black hole filled with drama, the struggle to change a lifestyle that's just too difficult to master. We long for a peace that passes all understanding, a deep peace that grounds our souls in the midst of this chaos. But this is not what Jesus promises us today. His teaching comes as he's preparing his disciples to go out and enter the mission field. He warns them that they will be maligned, resisted, rejected, and possibly even crucified because of his message. But he also reassures them that their lives are in God's hands, saying not even a single sparrow falls to the ground apart from their heavenly Father. The way of suffering is blessed by God. And those who turn from it by denying Jesus have no share in Jesus' kingdom. This is a very difficult message. And it's one that would drive me to despair if not for the things that Jesus does at the time of his arrest. When Jesus is arrested at the end of Matthew's gospel, one of his disciples draws the sword to defend his master. But Jesus tells him to put it away, saying, "All who take the sword will perish by the sword." During Jesus' trial, people keep asking Peter, "Are you one of his disciples? I'm sure I saw you in Gethsemane with him." And Peter denies Jesus not one, not two, but 3 times. Yet Peter is reconciled to the risen Christ and sent out to proclaim the arrival of God's kingdom at the end of the gospel. It would appear that denying Jesus and abandoning his way never excludes the possibility of redemption. It would also appear that Jesus refuses to wage war through military might and bloodshed. Instead, He wages war through the power of his cross. Now, there's one thing that you and I miss when we hear this teaching, something that Jesus' first audience would have understood immediately. Jesus and the people that he's speaking to see the world as a battleground. Creation is caught in the middle of a war between two cosmic forces who are fighting for dominion over the earth and all of its inhabitants. One side is led by God and the heavenly host. The other side is led by Beelzebul, whose name literally means Lord of Flies, and who is the prince of spirits that are hostile to God. These cosmic forces act through historical events in their struggle for power. And the Jews of Jesus' day saw the Roman occupation of their homeland as a strike against God, the same God who delivered them from Egypt, a God who promised them a land of their own. So when Jesus says to his disciples, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace but a sword," he is talking about waging a cosmic war against the spirits who are hostile to God and those who serve such spirits. Yet the war Jesus wages is never won through arms. It's a war waged on the cross. He who came to wage war also says, "Whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. For those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." The cross is the place where Jesus wages this cosmic battle. He doesn't come to make peace with the spirits that are hostile to God. He doesn't come to compromise with them. He comes to deliver us from them. The cross is the sword of Christ. It's not a weapon to be wielded. It's a place to be nailed to. On the cross, Jesus gives himself into the hands of all who are hostile to God. He freely surrenders himself to those who work against God's promises to the faithful. Yet when these forces believed that they had victory, Christ burst forth from the tomb, breaking their power and diminishing their hold on the world and its inhabitants forever, until that day when they will be utterly destroyed and can threaten God's people no longer. The news that Jesus calls us to share is the news that God has already won the battle. The earth and all of its creatures rest securely in the hands of Christ, for the Father has given him all authority in heaven and on earth. We are called to be his disciples, knowing that all the while we may face opposition and rejection now. Yet God's victory has already been won, and we have nothing to fear. Whether you see Jesus or see the world as Jesus and his first audience did, or whether you have a more nuanced view, one thing is sure. Those who work against God's promises in the present age will not have final victory, because Christ has already won. Yet before we're too quick to jump on the bandwagon and condemn those who disagree with us as enemies of God, we must embrace the cross of Christ. The cross of Jesus is the place where he wages war. It's also a place of reconciliation for all of those who oppose God. When we embrace the cross, we will not only find our Lord there, we will also find one another. The cross becomes a meeting place, a place where the spirits of the world are overcome by the peace and the cooperation of those who embrace the cross and all that the cross stands for. At the foot of the cross, we learn what it means to love one another as Jesus loved us. At the foot of the cross, we learn what it means to seek truth and forgive sin. At the foot of the cross, we learn what it means to find our lives by losing them for the sake of Christ. and we learn what it means to trust in the victory that Christ has won on our behalf. So the next time that you turn on the 10 o'clock news, or listen to the radio, or browse the latest stories on your iPhone, remember this. Christ is victorious, and nothing, not even the gates of hell, can stand against him. Christ redeemed the earth and all that fills it on the cross. He has delivered us from evil, and he sends us out to share the good news. There will be those who resist this news and the implications that it brings. Yet Jesus assures us that the hairs on our heads have already been counted, and that we rest securely in the hands of God. Do not be afraid. You belong to Christ.